12 years of experience being in promotion committee. So think about that, okay? so now I don't want to go beating the bush. I would like to just, what we do is like the Sutra Sthapana. I would like to read the first paragraph of the first chapter, every word, like the way we read the Vedas, which is like I'm trying to set as high a bar as I can. And then I'll go back to the preface, in a sense, what is the story behind this book, Reframing Dynamism. Being is inherently dynamic, or rather, it is dynamism itself that establishes being. To ground this thesis, we need to counter two positions. One, that being is changeless or lacks spontaneity. And two, that there exist only the modes of becoming that co-constitute each other in a chain of transitory vectors. In other words, we confront either statism or nihilism over dynamic being, spontaneously actualizing the manifold. But when we engage philosophies East and West, we become puzzled as to why changelessness holds primacy over pulsation. Sorry. No worries. Okay. So, Heidegger has done an amazing job, not just as an original thinker, but also as a historian of philosophy. In his Introduction to Metaphysics, you can read how he investigates being from Aristotle all the way through. And we have to go back to, let's see, the investigation into Sat, Satta. Na sadasit, na sadasit tadanim, in the Rig Veda. We have put that book in with the shroud of mysticism and religiosity, and also imposed a taboo. Nobody understands the Vedas, and translations is not good. Forget all of that. So the being is the utmost importance for philosophers, for us to investigate what it means to be. But that being that we have been investigating, whether from the East or the West, for at least 3,500 years of our known literary history of texts addressing being, have chosen this foundation, a static foundation, the absolute changeless thing. And this is not an Eastern Brahman problem. This is not a Western problem. Between Heraclitus and Parmenides, we know who wins. This is an eternal problem of we, the philosophers, are seeking to ground, to anchor ourselves, to find something to rely on, to escape our transitoriness. And change has scared us. But the fact of the matter is, nothing is changeless. That whatever the mystical thing we are talking about, we have no pramana. we cannot invoke things as philosophers that we cannot reach through investigation. Modern physics does not allow us a type of metaphysics of absolute changeless being. There is nothing that quantum physics can tell us that there lies something as a foundation that is motionless, changeless, static, unchanging entity. There is nothing in evolutionary biology that can tell us that there is absolutely changeless something going on or things are happening on top of that. Everything is changing. But let's come back to our social dynamics. We are changing so much, culturally, historically, linguistically. In all, our own imagination about who we are is in the flux. So this changeless being, absolute, I believe, is a metaphysics that could not stand post-1905 Einsteinian principle or the world we live in today. And we can go back to Kanada's, Padartha Shastra. We can go to Democritus, East and West. I'm not saying this idea is greater over that idea. Ideas are ideas. Don't die for it. But what we see is, if we want to do philosophy grounded on the physics or the metaphysics that we can derive out of that, we need such a metaphysics that stands on this very premise of dynamism. But now we have another vector. Things are changing. And how do we understand change? Things are temporal. How do we understand time? Time is a device to measure things. In my book, I've tried to debunk every single presupposition. This is too ambitious. I would like you to trash it. As a philosopher, I'm open to it. But all of these premises have to be questioned. And what happens to this instantaneous, momentary, codependent, arising, a rejection of anything foundational, lacking Swabhava, inherent nature, is a gateway to nihilism. And I myself, what if nihilism is the true answer to our being? Maybe so. But I don't have the courage to go there. Maybe you do. I don't stop you from. But I'm not a nihilist thinker. To change is not to annihilate yourself. I have changed every single position maybe I have upheld at one time. I think every single cell in my body has changed since I was born. So this, I'm not saying, but there lies something that has never changed. There are few initial points I would like to still to read that inspired me to go there, take this route. I would exaggerate, only a Kashmiri philosopher. But that would be very biased, And not that I'm from Kashmir, but I love Kashmiri thinkers. There is this Hela Raja, a Bhuti Raja Tanai, son of Bhuti Raja. Abhinav Gupta addresses him as a Bhuti Raja Tanai. Just one word, just one single word from his entire commentary that flipped everything I was thinking about. Kalakhena swatantrena. That's spontaneity. That is also called time. The freedom that we call temporality. Wait a minute. No philosopher in the world has ever argued, ever positioned time as freedom. I do not know any other philosopher than Nataraju from maybe 10th, 11th century. You can trace that history. That is, when I'm trying to beg you to read my book, I need to give you the keys to unlock these chambers. So I need to share with you openly some of the concepts where I am getting these ideas from. And then the second idea I got from Abhinavagupta. Asthasya eka rupeda vapusha chen maheshwara maheshwara tam samvittam tad adyaksha ghatadivat. Where the absolute Lord Shiva to remain the same, or in the same body, in the same form, statically basically, he would have to negate his own lordship. He would lack inherent consciousness. And he would be just like the pot, Ghatadivat. If you have freedom, you would like to do something with your freedom. When you do something, things change. And in this absolute monistic world, when there is a singular reality, how can you assume that there is this absolute and it is unchanging? I think Shankara fell into the trap of Nagarjuna. I would have consulted him to not go there if I were his disciple. Why? Because he could have made that absolute intrinsically dynamic. And then all the categories of avidya, and then Saptavida Anupapatti of Ramanuja, and all the issues that foresee with the conundrum and then unresolved issues forever, we would not have to deal with any of those. But then there is suffering in the world, there is transitoriness, death and disease in the world, the question of evil, equivalent to the question of evil. You want good to be so good, then it's useless. You want your mom to never scold you, therefore you just throw her out of the house because if someone scolds me, she can't be my mother. It is like looking for something, such an absolute that is inapplicable and useless. Nirguna is useless. That's what it is. What do you do with the nirguna things? So, is that all that is there for initially thinking in this direction? Not yet, because I haven't read the lines, but I'm just giving you initial starting points. Tad e jati tannai jati tad dure tad vantike tad suptasya sarvasya tad sarvasyasti vahita. Tad e jati, every company. This is from the Vedas, I'm chanting. Tad, the absolute, is spontaneous. We did not need a 10th century Kashmiri philosopher to think that the absolute is intrinsically dynamic. This line of thinking was bracketed historically. We left that out for whatever the reason. And I started thinking, I started rethinking actually. I needed to rediscover, it's partly a comparative philosophy, partly a original thinking, but partly a patch of philosophy. I love the patch of joy. It's like I have collected pieces from 50 different fabrics in making this book. All the different philosophers who did not strongly advocate the position but who did trace, almost like an echo of forgotten philosophy. And in that sense, I'm a historian. So I go to Yaskar. Sarvam Nama Akhyata Jamaha Shakataya. He cites, Yaskar is a pre-Buddhist philosopher. You will call etymologist because that makes it look like philosophy is still resort to Europe. If you say Yaskar is not a philosopher, then we can at least null down one Indian thinker. So everything can be conceived, is conceived on the basis of this spontaneity expressed through the verbs that refer to action. All the noun words are derivatives of the verbs. And what do they refer to? All of them ultimately refer to bhusattayam. The first verb is bhu, to be, is to exist. So this constant dynamism goes through different modifications, and what is being an entity then? Gunasandravo dravyam, a coagulation, a coming together of the tropes. So all the dynamic entities coming to a certain vector. We need to think through this dynamism of when an entity is in the flux, is constantly being made, but in a certain point in space and time, an entity is given its name. It was a plastic before the plastic, it was well before well, a tar before tar, carbon before carbon, a plant before plant, carbohydrate, and God knows what. All these names are in the flux. All these forms are in the flux. Nothing is decaying, nothing is annihilated, there is no nihilism, but there is no absolute statism either. So what I'm trying to suggest is we can rethink Indian philosophy through a different set of metaphysical angle that accommodates latest of the physics. So we are not going back to constantly defending Kanada's Padartha Shastra or Prakriti and Purusha and so metaphysics. And we are not throwing everything like a baby in a proverbial bathtub. So this process has helped me to accommodate new ideas, accommodate new ways of thinking, engaging some of the philosophers from the West, for example, Henry Bergson or Gilles Deleuze. I like those philosophers far better than these mainstream analytical philosophers. Most likely they are themselves outcast in their own domain. That may be one of the terms I have, but there is also a particular thing I'm doing, that how to write Indian philosophy. In my introduction, I do talk about it. I'm through and through polemical, and that unnerves some of my Western critics, that I am just bringing up positions unwantedly, like your unnerving neighbor, who just brings up issues of, all kinds of noise or something or the other. This dialogical, I'm not saying it should be called polemical, but if this dialogical nature is intrinsically woven in the fabric of thinking in Indian philosophy, every single Indian philosopher is a comparative philosopher. Shankaracharya never did his philosophy without reading all the other schools, citing all the other schools, and comparative philosophy, the way we are doing now, is garbage. What they were doing is better. What do I mean by that? You read books of these comparative philosophies. We are trying to simply say that all these thinkings map European thinking. You are not trying to give anything original. Just simply say India has nothing original to offer to the world and stop there. Why waste time? If there is something original, we need to go back to those original thinkings and then maybe hammer and chisel and find some more luster out of the diamonds and then bring it to the world. And that is where I would say my work itself is like the Bhashyakara, a commentator in the traditional sense, writing commentary, basically, on how Yaska thought through. But there was a great disciple of Yaska who came about maybe 1,000 years after him. That is how Indian philosophy moves. His name is Bhartrihari. Bhartrihari gave one independent chapter on time, Kala, in the last section of his book, one entire chapter on the philosophy of time. Many of these things are common and contemporary, contemporaneous to his time, and he's referring to all different positions, and that's okay. But there are many starting points, original thinking, that soak the philosophy, not exactly another 1,000 years, but in 11th century, now go from 4th century to Abhinavagupta. You have to read Abhinavagupta. And in Abhinavagupta, of course, the type of philosophical thinking you are used to and the way he writes may be different, but that should not be a deterrent factor. I also like to write like Abhinavagupta. Unfortunately, I cannot. English is not my language. I picked up on the way to my journey. Like when I left Nepal, and how long did it take for me to pick up Hindi? As long as it took me to take a bus from Kathmandu to Varanasi. When I was in Kathmandu, I didn't know how to speak Hindi. And next day, when I landed in Varanasi, I was already speaking in Hindi. The same way I picked up English language on my way to Europe. So, I do believe that the overemphasis in mathematical, analytical writing or syllogism, so that not even Udayanacharya, you can find metaphors and poetry even in Udayana's thinking. Read Nyaya Kusumanjali, for example. And then you will have to come to Gadadhar Bhattacharya. And then you are as good as a moral logic guy, and poetry is gone. A philosopher dies. A mathematician is born. A philosopher is not just a brain to me. A philosopher also has a heart that pulsates, onda, that pulsates. A philosopher thinks, but doesn't just think, he lives those ideas. A philosopher is therefore an embodiment of rationality, rational analytical thinking, and poetic vision. And of course, this type of experiment doesn't take you too far. When you are trying to do too many experiments, then to get accepted, to get the citation numbers may not always be best choice. Do what many other people do, the biggest name people do, cite them, safe side. But it's okay, I'm done. I have achieved what I wanted to for this body. I don't need more approvals from anybody. I'm happy with it. And I want to do what I want to do. Actually, one of the reasons I came to India now is I wanted to publish all my unpublished Sanskrit works. In a side, I had been writing in Sanskrit, but I didn't get those as my publications. And you know, there's always a pressure of tenure and promotion and all these things, and numbers matter. The publication numbers matter. Writing in Sanskrit doesn't matter. So I published all my 8 works just in one get-go this time. And I'm so happy I was able to do so. I don't need anybody's approval. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm free now. Whatever the level of freedom I can enjoy, let's do it. So my main objective today, not to give you a big discourse, we can go deeper into the book tomorrow, because I hope you will have little more time at least to scan through different pages and wherever, but to share with you the premise that I'm coming from. A Vedic Rishi, you know Rishi is what? A mystic guy? A saint, hermit? No. I do not think Rishi that way. The verb, again, as I said, I think through yaskas, categories, through dynamism. Rishi, the word is derived from the verbal base ri gato. One who abides in this pure dynamism. Rishi, ri, gati, motion, who recognizes dynamism, one who has realized dynamism. How could a rishi who tells us, charaiveti, charaiveti, keep on moving, how could he give birth to the statism is beyond my comprehension. So why did we come down to that absolute statism and put our philosophy in the closet, inside a box, is beyond my reasoning. There was one philosopher whom we know only through citations. All his works are lost. And who are citing him? Those who want to kill his ideas, to oppose his ideas. Mostly Shankaracharya and Sureshwaracharya. So they are citing him, advocating the key categories like drishti, which I have investigated in my 2006 publication. The absolute nahi drashtur drishte vipari lopo asti Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That's the seeing. There is no cessation of the seeing, of the seer. But then this seeing, pure consciousness, luminosity, is interpreted by Shankaracharya as the absolute static Nirguna Brahma. But Bhartri Prapancha, that's his name. Bhartri Prapancha understands this na vipari lopo asti, this drishti, this constant seeing is what constitutes consciousness. Consciousness is not a static, passive entity. It's a reflexive spontaneity. So this reflexivity is what opens up the window of self-recognition, pratyavijnana. This is what is constituted with pratyavamarsa, reflexivity. And simple word, vimarsa. I'm a missionary guy. I have used this vimarsa, made a foundation out of it, vimarsa foundation. You guys can check. I want to copy the model of advocating some positions, and many of my Western students are very happy that we are actually advocating something very interesting, because now in the West, ideas are just like trash bags, like the polythene bags you use and then throw into garbage. We want to uphold some ideas now. We want to see through, reinterpret the world, reality through some of these ideas, to do new bhashyas. I even had one dialogue with the analytical philosopher in the West, Bernardo Castro. I think that my dialogue should come out very soon. It was like a 2-hour dialogue. I had it about 2 weeks ago. And generally it was the public platform. They will make it available in YouTube. So I want to open up for actual conversation rather than just monotonous talk. And through that, I would also have an opportunity to learn from you. And maybe this type of conversation of how we can re-engage classical Indian modes of thinking might even inspire you to engage some of these ideas in your own dissertation writing process. And again, I'm saying that it has nothing to do with you being here in Delhi, because this is exactly what I do also at Stony Brook in New York. Because all the ideas should get a fair chance of exploration. And if they fail rationality, all the ideas should be discarded equally. I would like to stop at this point, Professor Nataraju, so that we can have a conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Those were the initial remarks on the work, and probably we'll have more detailed talk tomorrow. As of now, I mean, we are left with 35 minutes. Yes, you have students, anything to ask, and observations. I will just start with one, so that we'll just kickstart the whole discussion. I mean, very interesting. See, majority of the thinkers that followed Shankara were obviously under the spell, the magical spell of Shankara.
Yeah.
So
Me
the
too.
terminology.
Me too. I've spent most of my life reading Shankara.
Literally last 1200 years.
Yeah.
It's a dominant terminology, concepts, theorizing. We all just, remain.
And to make it worse, I'm a product of a monastery. To make it worse, and I'm very open about it too. I tell my Western philosopher friends that I was raised in Shankara's monastery. And if they want to get scared and run away, I need to let them know in advance. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the later thinkers in India, in Indian context, obviously had to either go with Shankara's position or make it into a Purvapaksha, critique Shankara. So ignoring Shankara is unknown for us in the last 1200 years. Again, even your talk also makes him into a Purvapaksha. You're making him into a Purvapaksha. Ignoring has not become possible for us. We have not 1200. Either you go with the Siddhanta on the lines of Shankara's thinking, But however, I mean, this is obviously the challenge to Shankara's school, was initiated by Ramanuja, Vedanta Deshika, and Sudarshana Suri on the Vishishtadvaita front.
Yeah.
And the other front was on the Bhartrhari and Abhinava Gupta. Those two lines of thought actually started by. But simple. I have many things that I noted, but I'll leave it for tomorrow's discussion. Just to have, grab your attention. You came up with Tadejati, Tadure, Tadvantike. Eja Dhatu, if you look at the Eja Dhatu, at some point Vivekananda also quotes this, Isha Ejati Nishrutam, while talking about the cosmology creation project. Eja Shabda, if we take not as creation, but as projection, Ejati to project. Vivekananda's commentary is that it's not to be taken as creation, but it is to be Eja Shabda, Eja Dhatu has to be taken as projection. The moment we take it as a projection, it aligns more with the Vivatta appearance theory of Shankara.
You can see the
you
politics there, right? The politics of philosophers. Which club we join? It's a big deal,
No.
Like you must have saw those clubs, like fraternities, like college fraternities. All the philosophers' clubs are like that, meaningless at the end of the day. Yes, so.
Within the Vivekananda follows, again there is Medhananda at US and Sarvapriyananda.
Yeah.
So both are again two clubs.
Yeah.
So the one club of Medhananda is challenging this position.
Yeah.
And is more aligning with the. So, Eja Dhatu and how you want to look at it. But the moment it is a projection theory, so the creation and dynamism come into a question.
Thank you for the note. Let me throw some grammar into Sanskrit words. We have 2 or 3 words for the absolute, the whatever is considered true, real. Number 1 is Atma. Everybody in India knows the word Atma. Do you know what the verbal base for that? It is derived from Ata Satatya Gamane. At, that means that keeps constantly revolving. I would love to have a little chat with Shankaracharya on this. Because the very meaning of the word doesn't make it a static log. It's a dynamic pulsation. Let's go to Purusha. That's another word. It's not person in the original thinking. Purusha eve idam sarvam jat bhutam jachavabhyam uta amritatta seshano jadannena tirohati. So this is also Puri Gamane. It's quite interesting. It is derived from going. Huh? The 2 words for the self that Shankara understood as motionless, both are derived from the root that explicitly refer dynamism. Let's go to Brahman. Brihat, to envelop, to expand. And it could even mean to explode, actually. That is why Bhartiyari got the idea of sphuta. Sputir vikasani, to blossom. Just throwing a few words in hope that you can see how a Sanskrit philosopher, where the language itself allows you to think through dynamism and not statism. Forget this, at least sansar mithya hai. You all have heard of this, right? You know Hindi. Sansar mithya hai, jagat mithya hai, brahma satyam jagat mithya. Let's go to these two words, Sansara and Jagat. Sam and Sri Gata, something that keeps going, moving forward. It cannot be true because everything I'm referring to is directly hinting at dynamism. But at least let's go to Jagat. What are you talking about? This is some word using for gam. Really, the main verb gati, gaman. The Jagat, the word itself is something that is spontaneous. I think we have done a great disservice to Indian philosophy for the last 1200 years, or maybe even 2000 years, starting from Nagarjuna's time, or if we go Shankara's time, at least for the Hindu philosophy, by making it dogmatically dormant and passive and lacking dynamism. Where am I getting this passion from? No, now you can blame me for my spiritual background of worshipping Kali. Because for me, time is this living, breathing dynamism, Shakti. And Kala is not just a static measuring device. That very spontaneity that constitutes freedom within being, Swatantra Shakti. Because Bhartriyar's teacher himself said, Kalakyan Swatantra. What does Abhinava's teacher said? What does Abhinava say? Abhinava says, Swatantra Shakti, Kramasam Sisripusha, Pramatmata Cheti Divor Vibhuti, Tadeva Devi Trayamantaratma, Rasam Anuttara Me Pratayat. So, I beg you also to read Sanskrit. It's not as lucrative as reading English, but when I went to the West, I realized every taxi driver knows English. It was nothing special about it. The only thing that mattered was my Sanskrit knowledge. So your uniqueness is not going to be in you being able to understand English concepts. Your uniqueness will come in you being able to combine these ideas that machines hopefully will not catch up at least to your lifetime. And so something original should survive, at least for our generation. So again, I need questions from you. I have a professor give comments. We can throw the mic around. Yeah, there's question here, but come on.
It's fine.
Somebody has to.
It's a good introductory to your book. My question is like, it's a doubt that it's a new thing for me to hear the absolute is dynamic. It is always it's always spontaneous because I studied Shankara's Brahman and all.
Yeah.
My question is, if the absolute is dynamic, it's always moving, it's always spontaneous, it should come in it should be limited by time and space. So if the absolute is limited by time and space, so it should lose its absoluteness then.
Yeah.
How the absolute becomes limited in time?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's exactly what Shankara and all the other philosophers thought, because for them, time is a measuring device. It delimits, not spontaneity. The projected temporality that manifests in our conceptual realm is a product of our language. And there is no absolute time for absolutely evenness. There's this biology of time. We know that different species have different wavelengths of measuring time. And different languages have different ways of encoding time. For example, English language does not allow you to experience past tense in two forms of the past that you did not witness and the past that you were the witness of. In Sanskrit, that is how we divide past tense. The past that I saw and the past that I didn't see, parokshelit, right? So, we should not take for granted that there is this absolute time, and that time is what people measure everything with. The relativity should teach us something about the very notion of whether there is absolute time or not. But I'm going beyond that. What I'm saying is this freedom within absolute, intrinsic to the absolute, is what manifests through the modes of measuring, conceptual measuring first, because conceptualization is not possible without certain measurement, like a spatial temporal measuring. And for all the motions we measure in time, all the static entities we measure in space, and our concepts convey what we measure. So conceptualization is the process of measuring in space and time. I agree to that. But there is this freedom that is already exercised in the mechanisms of making the measuring devices of time and space. So there is something beneath space-time that is manifest within that is spontaneity. That is what I'm calling Swatantra freedom. That is identical to being. I'm not considering that as the freedom of being. This freedom is being. And in that sense, I'm not recognizing time as a measuring device. That's a fundamentally where we come from, because cognitive linguistics allow us to see time constructed differently across cultures. Biology tells us that time is measured differently by different species. So, and even in quantum physics, we go there, and then this relativity teaches us that this measurement is relative, and therefore we need to go beyond what we get, some type of shakti, some type of capacity. And that capacity is manifest in the modes of measuring, cognitive, linguistic, cultural, biological, because there's a biological measuring, that every cell is measuring time. So therefore, the single cellular beings underwater actually measure when the sunlight is going to hit, and then they surface up and then they go down. So there's a body clock, everything is synchronized. And because we live under this synchronicity, we think this is absolute. But the synchronicity is itself a mechanism for that freedom to manifest in this diversity. So I have taken the liberty to learn a little bit from Deleuze and Bergson in the process. So I can say all these ideas. But more than that, there is one philosopher I almost forgot to mention, Somananda. He is like a grandpa philosopher for Abhinavagupta. And he is the one who could see this inherent volition and reflexivity and dynamism within that volition. To desire, to will is to act. Will is action. Will is to will. So this within the absolute. And having those things did not delimit it, but rather it allowed manifoldness. Because of the will, tad aikshatam, bahusyam prajaye, ekoham bahusyam, ekaki naivarene. And if I want to be many, patischa patnischa abhavatam, so dvedha vivajata pat means to split, it splits and became pati and patni, one half. It's literally like a chickpea. So it became many. So where is delusion there? At least not in the Upanishads, right? Not in the Upanishads. I am, in a sense, trying to be more honest to the original thrust of the Vedas and Upanishads than these later commentaries. But at the same time, I'm finding this philosophy more applicable to modern physics and metaphysics than the Sansar Mithya hai type of metaphysics, which is useless for us. We cannot converse with any philosopher in the West by adopting that position. So, thank you.
You want to say? Yeah, you. Mike.
Could you yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. So I had a question. So when we talk about permanence dynamism, so can we say that it is the greatest dynamism we can see? So if something is in great change or is in a great speed of dynamism, so it appears to be constant, or like if a fan is running in a very fast speed, so it appears to be constant. So can we say that somewhere Shankara projected that constantness?
So the idea of momentary, the way I saw it, that it's like these two greatest of the philosophers, trapped in their own conceptual horizons. One guy fell in the trap of momentariness. I'm talking of the Buddha. Another fell in the trap of escaping from momentariness, of Shashwata. Nagarjuna said there is no, let's escape from any of these extremes. And I don't know what type of trap that is. We'll go into that separately. But these both are conceptual entities. Momentariness, permanence are concepts grounded on time only when we consider time as a measuring device. When we do not consider time as such as a measuring device, then to say something is momentary, to say something is permanent, those stop making sense, because these are temporal concepts. These absolutes I'm discussing are not temporal in the sense. Temporality is a product. Temporality does not constitute reality of these things. Temporality projects. So temporality allows us to determine things in finite realm. So the pure motion, pure dynamism is not temporal. It's out because constant, permanent, I am eternal. This concept is a counter to momentariness. So momentariness is a temporal concept. If we were not to think of time, then we would not need to think of whether things are permanent or momentary. So there we stop under the domain of time, even though talking about something absolute. Why should the absolute be constant or not constant? That's a temporal concept. Get out of temporal concept. Temporal in the sense, time as a measuring device. Not recognizing time as pure dynamism. I do not need to measure in the Shashwata term or momentary terms for the pure dynamism that I'm addressing here. So therefore, historically, I think there has been either misunderstanding or a great injustice to read in one line of Indian philosophy. Actually, I was talking to some of my friends here, only in India that is even possible. Maybe let's read the Vedic text again, through the dust, and then see, how much of misreading has occurred, and maybe we can get out of every single presupposition and then maybe get some original thinking. And unfortunately, that type of freedom we have. Culturally we have. I mean, we don't need to go to modern, the democratic Western secular society to get that freedom. All our acharyas confirmed that, enjoyed that freedom to interpret the text as long as language, the rules allowed, as long as they saw consistency in thinking. And I'm trying to do the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, so this my question may be happening probably tomorrow, but I'm curious to know. And I wish to go through Heidegger, which you did mention. The question of being in terms of Dasein, being there, is twofold. The first, that being is an existent, an entity which is occupying a spatiality, but it is not fixed. So being is also always doing. So it is in karya that the human existence is to be understood. So that is somewhere the dynamism or fragility of this existence is. Now, when you did mention about this spandha, a consciousness which is dynamic, reflexive, though somehow I was trying to gather what you might say through your response to the students, that it is not spandha in the permanent sense of completely dissociating from temporality, but does spandha karika, those who believe in spandha thought, recognizes this dynamism of the world, or does it transcend that and talks about this spandha in the metaphysical alone? Am I making sense?
Yeah. First, Heidegger, and then we'll go to Abhinav. Heidegger did give us a little sense of recognizing spontaneity within being, and this design has this movement embedded within. I'm reading not like a sophisticated like Heidegger, but as a contemporary writer. I'm in conversation with him, Thomas Nail. He has a book, Being and Motion. So I've actually used his book also. So in this one, he brings a good fresh critique of Heidegger, and so at least he believes that even in Heidegger, he could not go to that pure motion itself in his thinking of being. He is now leaning to believe that maybe Karl Marx did, and I do not know that. I would have to see. In social dynamism, maybe he saw that. Maybe I do not know in that utopia whether that dynamism is still there. But coming back to Spanda, the first sutra, Yasyonmesha nimeshabhyam jagataha pralayodayo tam shakti chakra vibhava prabhavam sankaram sthumam. So most people, the Sanskrit citation is like prayers, and people think. Actually, one friend was even joking that you all need to learn Sanskrit because if you are quarreling with your wife, people would think that you are sitting and praying together. So these are philosophical texts I'm citing, and I know that for many of you, I'm just praying. So that's a problem. That's it. From this first sutra, first aphorism, what we know is that unmesha nimesha, unfolding in the modes of becoming, and then this absolute transcendence, or in Kshamaraja's terminology of immanence and transcendence, Vishwatirnata, Vishwamayata, is a simultaneous process. It's not an either or thing. It's constant. It's instantaneously at the same time. Vishwamaya is manifest into the manifold, and Vishwatirna is transcendent from the manifold too. So it's not a gradual process of now we have this world and we have many, and then time will come and all the diversity will collapse and we will all become one. There's nothing like that. It's a constant pulsation of the manifold. The example would be the tides and the ocean. It is not that all the tides will subside and then finally there will be the ocean. Back again. There always is the ocean. Singularity is always there. Within the manifold. Manifold doesn't negate singularity. These are not opposing categories. So that is the central premise for Spanda that I'm coming from. Thank you. Vikramji, you might have some comments on that. But yeah, I would like to go there. There's a question from a student.
Thank you, Professor, for enlightening us with an alternative to dichotomous thinking in India.
I already know that if I could have, then somebody else could have that also. How to liberate ourselves from these misreadings? Being sincere to ourselves that we are not faith-driven. What do I mean by faith? I'm not asking you to lack Shraddha. Faith always to me is blind. Shraddha is not blind. So I have tremendous Shraddha in these philosophers. But I'm not going to take any of their words blindly. I want to understand, examine, explore, analyze the same way. Whether it is saying Shankaracharya is saying or Kant is saying, I don't care. So that is, and then we will gain limited result freedom, meaning I'm trying to read and liberate myself from my own preconceptions. You know, as I said, it's easy for me to think what I need to free myself from because I'm a product of ashram. And now I started questioning how much of what I am taught is absolutely true. But if you are not even taught, you have to have the courage to make mistake. Bhartiya says again, Asatte Bhatmani Sthitva Tata Satyam Samihate. By abiding on the path of untruth, one reaches to the truth. So the path is not the goal, and we have to have the courage to make mistakes. Two, I beg you to read as quickly as you can the link. Sorry, please share with these guys. The new link I shared with you just like an hour ago. It's like diversifying Indian philosophy, because the point you raised about this school thinking is garbage. What do I mean by that is, you read the way we are thinking that is Advaita Vedanta, and that's what Shankaracharya is the thinker, and then others are the followers. What do you think? Like he's a prophet Muhammad? I'm sorry. So, read Sureshwaracharya. With great reverence, he debunks many of the ideas of Shankaracharya. With great respect. It's not like we have different vocabulary to counter, like our father and then the neighbor, you know. If it is I'm criticizing is your dad, then I might not use the same word that I'm criticizing my father. But this internal rethinking is constant. Sureshwara was the elder student. He was a contemporary of Shankara. They were writing parallel. And Sureshwara was not having it. K.P. Jog has written, he was one of the Australian philosophers, he has written on these Sureshwara's division and critique of Shankaracharya. So this is just an example. Who is this like a school of thinker? You know, like in the Advaita, I can name every single philosopher is thinking differently. In the Nyaya, Udyodhakara doesn't agree to Acharya. Vachaspati doesn't agree to Udyodhakara. Or you go to all the way to Gangesha, you know. So Indian thinking within school is a great asset in the sense that we are not randomly thinking, restarting the wheel every single time, but every single philosopher within each school is re-examining the category, and that is what we are missing when we are calling this as this school, that is that school, like in the school of Pratibhigya, between Utpala and Abhinavagupta, right? Abhinavagupta is the greatest ever fan. Oh my gosh, he dedicated his life entirety just to understand Utpala Deva, but he doesn't stand in everything with Utpala Deva. He goes beyond Utpala Deva. So every single Indian philosopher has enjoyed this freedom historically. Today, it is a modern Western writing, and then these neo-writers like myself, who are a product of modern Western writing, and they are thinking like through Sampradaya, like the monastery. You go to Shankaracharya's monastery, and we follow Shankaracharya. This is a sweet story. I know it's not the way to end a philosophical conversation. I had a great excitement and also a kind of Archimedes moment, you know. I was in Bangalore in 2010 Sanskrit conference. I was in a hotel. Attached to that hotel was like this fresh juice stall, like the store. And then he would open at 7 or something in the morning. And I'm like, I love, you can't buy chiku in America. I love chiku and I can't buy it fresh in America, not even cold. Sometimes garbage rotten. I even like that because I can't have it. So he sells fresh chiku juice. I'm sitting there at 6:30 in the morning. And then one day, you know, like I was so desperate, I had to go early, and I'm like, when is the guy gonna come and I can have my juice? He comes, opens the shutter, and then without, you know, one good thing about us spiritual Hindus, we have a little deity in like a little closet or even of our grocery store, any store. He's a very spiritual guy apparently. So he burns a lamp and, you know, licks incense and then starts worshipping the photo of Shankaracharya. And then one day after that, he serves me the juice. I lived in Shankara's monastery for more than a decade. I had not seen such devotion among the Shankara's monks that I could see in this juice place where he has replaced other gods to Shankaracharya. So, you know, we are gradually being idolaters in the sense that the very disciple was so open to questioning his teacher while in his lifetime and write it in his book. And today we are free just by worshipping the statue of Shankaracharya. That is a danger we have to save India from. Only philosophers can do that. Thank you. So, next.
One last question before we can meet tomorrow again.
Sir,
No, you were time ended. No more tomorrow. For you tomorrow. Somebody new.
Nitesh, give others time. He always talks with me.
Yeah.
He takes 12 hours of every day my time.
No,
Okay, sure, yeah.
No, for him tomorrow.
For him tomorrow. You today.
Tomorrow.
I just have, already
Use the mic. Use the mic. I'm sorry.
Hello. Yeah. So, just it's raining and we are having tea, and just I'd like a little bit spice to our conversation also. But prior to that, coming to the student, you asked very important question which Acharya already answered. And, Abhinavagupta, Abhinavagupta one philosopher like Acharya said, who studied every one of his contemporaries and group of poets, and not even single one of them is fair. Not criticizing them. He agrees and agrees, and then he says, no, this is what I think. And he gives his own, he goes to the extent of giving his own ecologies. Look at Anuttara 16, 17 meanings of the words he's giving. He uses grammar, he uses logic, he uses parallel, he uses rasa theory and thought. So the whole the crux of the answer is that, like Acharya said in the very beginning, we have to step. We have to familiarize in comparative philosophy. We have to study, we have to familiarize ourselves with so many things. And apart from so many things, we can also adopt this methodology from other. The way he does it in all of his. So this is very interesting. And to just add on to a little bit comment, it just reminded me of your Vashisht. You are talking about Srishti and dynamism, and we discuss everything. There it is very clearly mentioned that when he answers Lord Ram, he says, "Ye kuch Srishti to hoi nahi." This nothing happened, and there was no time when this Srishti never happened. There will not be any time when this Srishti won't be happening again. I know so many Srishtis when even you are not there. He's saying in your Vashish that I know so many Srishtis when even you are not there. I know a particular time when even Ravana, defeated Ram. It's very much mentioned there. And to add on to that, you very rightly said that every philosopher is taking and criticizing other philosophers. Sir mentioned about Vedanta Deshin. He has written on Vallabhacharya. He has eulogized Vallabhacharya in 50 verses very openly. And though they are strong, we should support that they are strong opponents. So this is again one very important thing. Like Acharya said, that not just reading, familiarizing, and then openly and positively criticizing and going to better our philosophy. So one thing I always learned from Sir and from Acharya is that in the course of their conversation, he always gives very good lectures. But in the course of those lectures, the subtle points which he touches upon are priceless. I need not be this to say anything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vikramji. I'll just like to, last point to close. Just about maybe 2 months ago, there was a huge outcry in India. In the south, there are these Madhva monasteries, and they perform drama. And in that, they caricature Shankara, and they depicted Shankara as a Rakshasa for adhering to position. And as you can imagine, there is a huge outcry, and then they swiftly apologized, and then there was a further, debunking and bitterness and bellyaching. And why I'm bringing you, there was one good article written by somebody I saw about this whole episode and what India can learn from these experiences. This is what I was thinking to happen. Because our society, on one hand, allows open criticism, and on the other hand, we are so brainless, we have stopped reading the books. So all we can do is demonize one thinker over another. What we should be doing is a sincere Madhva philosopher, and if they lack brain, they can hire me. I don't mind, like lawyers. Be a true philosopher. If a Madhva school wants to hire you, that's all right. And defend that position and argue through that. It's fun game. Tomorrow you can criticize your own position. Do not stick to position. Positions are illusory.
Thank you, Professor. All of you who have come here, you can have have some snacks outside, and then see you tomorrow before 11. And if you need that, the book, the soft copy, you may contact Vivek or Vaishnav. But you will not forward it to the other groups or other places.
I can be in trouble.
It's a
Okay.
pirated version. So, before it is in the market, that's just, since you have attended, you can have it, either Vaishnavi can do that, or we can come tomorrow with questions, answers, so that we can have an interview. He is a visiting professor with us, he will be, you can take the benefit, maybe someday you can visit study groups and do research work with the professor. That's our,
How long is here?
he's here,
I'm,
20 days.
I'm going to return on the 12th of August. I'll go to Bangalore. I'll do some of the same exercises there with other friends and come back on the 8th, and then I will still have a few more days Sachchidananda. I'm going